You find yourself standing on the precipice of a forgotten time where the wind has long ceased to carry the names of the gods, and only their echoes remain. The first whisper comes from far away, from a land bathed in the dust of empires long crumbled, the land of the Hittites, a kingdom forged in the fires of thunder and war. It is here that the thunderer, Teshub, once reigned. Teshub, the storm god, stood as the ruler of the heavens. His roars splitting the skies, his lightning striking with divine fury, was the voice that commanded the storms. His was the power that coursed through the very bones of the earth. Feel the weight of his name as it reverberates through the silence, though it has been erased from the mouths of mortals for centuries. His worship, once a cornerstone of Hittite faith, now lies buried in the depths of history. But what happened to Teshub? How did the mighty thunderer who once wielded the storms with such wrath fade from the annals of time, his very name written in the dust of forgotten temples? The answer is a mystery, wrapped in the secrecy of ancient rituals and the collapse of an empire. You can almost hear the thunder rumbling faintly in the distance, as if the god's power still lingers, waiting for someone to remember. In the heart of Hattusa, the Hittite capital, Teshub was revered as a god of life and death, of war and fertility. He was a protector, a bringer of rain, and yet his wrath could strike down those who dared to defy him. The Hittites believed that his thunder was a voice that carried judgment. The mighty god would either bless them with rain or cast them into drought. But as you delve deeper, a chilling realization begins to set in. Teshub's worship didn't simply fade away because of the rise of new gods. No, there was something more sinister at play, something that had been hidden from the world for millennia. Teshub, it seems, did not simply disappear. He was erased. How could such a powerful and revered god be forgotten so easily? Who or what was responsible for wiping his name from history? These are the questions you must answer as you continue this journey, for the true story of Teshub is a tale of divine corruption, of forbidden knowledge, and of the gods' own struggle to preserve their power in a world that grows colder and more indifferent by the day. You feel a shiver down your spine, as if something ancient and powerful is stirring in the deep recesses of your mind, waiting to be remembered. Teshub's legacy, once towering and awe-inspiring, now flickers like a dying ember. His thunder has long since quieted, but there are those who still whisper his name in the dead of night, those who seek to reclaim the power of the forgotten gods. The storm of his return, if it comes, will not be gentle. But first, you must listen. You must listen to the whispers of the past, the stories that were buried, and the truths that were forbidden. Only then will you begin to understand the true nature of Teshub and the storm that still threatens to break. The first step in this journey is understanding the storm itself, for it is a storm unlike any other. It is a storm that has been forgotten by all but a few, a storm that will shake the very foundations of reality. And you, listener, are about to feel its power once again. The wind picks up as you turn towards the mountains, the sacred heights where Teshub's divine presence was said to dwell. Hazi, the mountain that stood as the heart of the storm, a place where the gods themselves once walked. It is here that Teshub was said to have first revealed his power to the people, showing them the true might of the heavens. But as you approach, a sense of unease washes over you. Hazi is not what it once was. The mountain is silent now, its peaks shrouded in mist, its ancient altars abandoned. The echoes of divine footsteps have faded, replaced by the empty whisper of the wind. What was once a site of pilgrimage, where kings and priests would come to seek Teshub's favor, has been forgotten by the world. It is as though the very mountain itself has been shunned, its secrets buried beneath layers of time and dust. Yet even in its desolation, there is something still here, something waiting to be uncovered. You have heard the stories, of course. The mountain of Hazi was said to be the place where Teshub's storm clouds gathered, where he would descend from the heavens and speak with the mortal kings who sought his blessing, would offer sacrifices to him, lambs, grain, wine, and in return, Storm God would give them the strength to fight their enemies, the rains to nourish their crops. He was a god of both war and peace, a god of balance. But the sacrifices were not always as pure as the priests would have you believe. Beneath the sanctity of these rituals, there were darker practices hidden from the world. Whispers tell of forbidden rites performed in the dead of night. Rituals that sought not just to honor Teshub, but to bind him, to control his power. These rites, said to involve blood and fire, were never spoken of in the open, and their nature has been lost to history. But the fear remains, a fear that the storm god's power, once given freely, could be taken back by force. As you stand there, staring up at the craggy peaks of Hazi, you begin to wonder, what secrets were hidden in these mountains? What forbidden knowledge did the priests uncover, only to bury it? Fearing the wrath of a god who had been betrayed, the storm once roared here, but now it is quiet. Too quiet. But there is something else that you sense, a faint pulse, a tremor in the air. Could it be that the storm is stirring once more? Or perhaps the storm has never truly left. Perhaps Teshub has been watching, waiting for the right moment to return. In the silence of Hazi, you begin to understand that this mountain, like the god it housed, has been abandoned. But to truly uncover the lost power of Teshub, you must descend into the heart of the mountain, into the place where the gods themselves once walked. There, you will find the answers you seek, buried beneath layers of stone, dust, and fear. The mountain calls you, beckoning you to uncover its forgotten secrets. But be warned, not all that is buried should be unearthed. The air thickens as you descend deeper into the history of the Hittites, where whispers of Teshub grow quieter, and the name of another god, Tarhunt, rises in the dark. Tarhunt, the god of thunder and the storm, whose worship began to overshadow that of Teshub. The Hittite Empire once divided its allegiances between the two gods. But the weight of Tarhunt's influence grew heavy over time, eclipsing the Thunderer's dominion over the skies. It is said that in the end, Tarhunt became the true ruler of the storm. While Teshub's thunder grew more and more distant, his name sinking into the forgotten deep. You are drawn now to the ancient city of Hattusa, where the remnants of Tarhunt's temple still stand in broken silence. The winds of time have ravaged it, but traces of its former glory remain. Once, the great temple of Tarhunt was the center of power in the Hittite capital, a grand monument to the god who held the heavens and the earth in his grasp. And yet, in the face of this divinity, Teshub's name began to fade, his once mighty roar swallowed by the thunder of his rival. It is in the stillness of the temple's ruins that you begin to feel the true depth of Teshub's fall from grace. The temple is no longer a place of reverence. The walls, once adorned with intricate carvings and vibrant murals, are now cracked and eroded. The colors faded beyond recognition. In this place where kings and priests once offered their prayers, there is now only silence. But that silence feels heavy, as if something unspeakable has been sealed here, buried beneath layers of dust and stone. You wander through the remains of the temple, your footsteps echoing in the emptiness. The air is thick with the scent of ancient incense, now long extinguished. Yet there is something else. Something that brushes against your skin like the faintest whisper of a forgotten god. It is the presence of Teshub, not gone, but hidden, erased from this sacred space in a way that feels unnatural. You know, this place once held the rituals of Tarhunt, the god who succeeded Teshub as the storm god of the Hittites. Tarhunt was a god of war, of protection, and of justice. His temple would have been filled with the hum of constant worship, offerings of incense, and sacrifices to ensure his favor. Tarhunt's thunders too were feared, his storms a warning to all who dared defy him. But it is said that in his time, his worship overshadowed Teshub's, and slowly, the Thunderer became nothing more than a forgotten echo in the corridors of time. The Temple of Tarhunt tells a story of divine succession, of one god's rise and another's fall. And yet, there is a deeper mystery here, a question that has puzzled scholars for centuries. Why did Teshub, the original storm god, lose his place in the Hittite pantheon? Some believe that Teshub's decline came because his worship was no longer deemed necessary. The Hittites, in their pursuit of greater power, sought a more militaristic god, one who could lead them in battle, not just provide for their crops. They turned to Tarhunt, whose thunderous might was seen as more directly aligned with the empire's need for military victory. Teshub's more gentle aspects, the god of rain and fertility, were overshadowed by Tarhunt's ferocious power. But there is another, darker possibility that lingers in the silence of the temple. What if Teshub's fall was not a result of a natural progression of power, but something more insidious? Could it be that the priests, in their desperation to maintain control, deliberately erased Teshub's name from the records? Perhaps his power had grown too unpredictable, too wild. For the Hittite leaders to control, they sought to replace him with a god they could manipulate, one who could be appeased with sacrifices of blood and fire, rather than storms that came without warning. There are those who whisper of a secret ritual performed in the very heart of the temple, a forbidden act that sealed Teshub's fate. It is said that the high priests, in their arrogance, sought to bind Tarhan's power to the land of Hatti, to ensure his rule would never waver. And in doing so, they unknowingly imprisoned the soul of the storm, locking Teshub away in the depths of the earth, where he could no longer reign over the skies. His name was struck from the sacred texts, and his thunder was silenced, swallowed by the roar of his rival. As you move deeper into the ruins, you feel the coldness of this hidden truth. The silence of the temple is oppressive now, as if the gods themselves have turned their faces away from this place. The stories of Tarhan's might, his victories in battle, seem hollow in comparison to the forgotten god who once ruled the storm. Teshub's thunder may have been buried here, but it was not truly gone. It waits dormant beneath the stones of this forsaken temple. Pause. Standing at the altar where sacrifices once flowed freely. The stones beneath your feet are warm, as if the memories of the ancient rites still linger in the air. And for a moment, you hear it, the faintest rumble of thunder, distant but unmistakable. It is as though Teshub is still watching, waiting. But for what? You cannot answer. Not yet. The truth of Teshub's fall, the reasons behind his erasure, remain buried beneath the layers of history. But there is something else, something darker that stirs in the temple's heart, a secret that refuses to remain hidden. You must continue, for the storm is far from over. The storm rages in the deepest recesses of your mind, pulling you further down into the tangled web of forgotten gods and hidden truths. As you sift through the ashes of Teshub's worship, something disturbing comes to light, an ancient tale of divine union. One so forbidden that it has been buried for centuries. A union between Teshub and a goddess whose very name has been wiped from all records. Lost to time like the storm that once ravaged the skies, it is said that Teshub, in his might, took Hepit, the goddess of fertility and mother of the gods, as his consort. Their union was not merely divine, it was cosmic. Teshub's thunder and Hepat's fertility formed a bond that bridged the heavens and the earth, giving birth to a new era of Hittite prosperity. But such power, such an intertwining of realms, could not remain unchallenged. For Teshub's union with Hepit was not one of harmony, but of tension. The storm god, who ruled the chaos of the skies, could not be tamed by the mother goddess, who sought to nurture and sustain life. Their relationship, though powerful, was inherently fraught with imbalance. One could not exist without the other, yet they were at odds with the very essence of their being. The storm that Teshub brought, violent and uncontrollable, clashed with Hepit's grounding influence of growth and order. This union, this paradox, was as beautiful as it was dangerous. And so, as often happens with divine matters, it came with a terrible price. Whispers tell of a time when the union between Teshub and Hepa was shattered, not by a god's wrath, but by betrayal. There are those who believe that the very priests who worshipped Teshub sought to sever this connection, fearing the consequences of such a union. Was it not unnatural for a god of the storm to bind himself so closely to the earth's fertility? Was it not blasphemous for the chaos of the heavens to merge with the nurturing forces of the earth? The priests feared that this union would disrupt the balance of the world itself, bringing about a cosmic collapse. It is said that a dark ritual was performed to undo the divine bond between Teshub and Hepit, ritual so forbidden that it has never been fully understood. The priests, desperate to break the union, called upon forces older than the gods themselves, forces that even Teshub could not control. The storm god's fury was unleashed in a way never seen before, and in the chaos that followed, the goddess Hepit was lost. Some say she was cast into the void, her essence scattered to the farthest reaches of the universe, while Teshub's once immense power was broken, leaving him forever scarred. As the god of the storm roared in his fury, the priests began to erase his name from the sacred texts, severing all memory of his once grand dominion. They believed that by erasing him they could undo the damage of the forbidden union, restoring balance to the world. But what they did not realize, what they could not understand, was that by breaking the bond, they did not free Teshub, they condemned him to a forgotten exile, his thunder swallowed by the winds. The The priest's ritual did not come without consequence. They thought they had sealed away Teshub's power for good, but in doing so, they released something far darker. It is said that Teshub's rage was not fully extinguished. The storm god, his power fragmented and cast into the void, came a god of shadows of force, neither alive nor dead, but lingering, waiting to return. It is in this fractured state that Teshub's name has been lost. The thunder of his rage still echoes through the cracks of the earth, but no mortal ear has heard it for millennia. And yet you feel it now, the stirrings of the storm, the whispers of a god long forgotten. Was it truly the priests who erased Teshub from the world, or was it something else, something more powerful, more ancient, that feared the union of storm and earth, of chaos and fertility? The truth, as you can sense, is buried deep, hidden within the ruins of forgotten temples and lost rituals. But the storm, like the truth, is never fully silenced. It waits. Always. You cannot escape the haunting question that lingers in your mind. What was the price of the forbidden union between Teshub and Hittite? What terrible force was unleashed, and why has it been kept hidden for so long? The answer, is somewhere deep within the heart of this forgotten world. But as you listen to the winds, the storm begins to feel closer. Teshub's power is not truly gone. It has merely been hidden, waiting for the moment when the world is ready to remember him once more. And you, listener, are closer than ever to uncovering the truth. The winds howl, louder now, swirling around you, as if the storm itself is rising once more from the depths of forgotten memory. The past, long buried beneath the weight of time and silence, begins to stir. You hear it faintly at first, a rumble in the distance, an unsettling sound that grows louder with each passing second. Echoing through the ruins of the forgotten temples and cities where Teshub's power once reigned supreme, the storm is not merely a force of nature. It is something more, something alive, something that waits for the moment when it can break free. You are pulled deeper into the heart of the myth, into the ancient echoes of a catastrophic event that reshaped the very fabric of Hittite civilization. A storm unlike any other descended upon the land with such fury and wrath that it threatened to tear the earth itself asunder. The thunder of Teshub, once so distant, now reverberates in your chest, and you can feel the weight of the divine rage that poured down from the heavens. This storm was not a natural occurrence. It was a divine judgment, a punishment for something so terrible that the gods themselves could not ignore it. But what, you ask? What crime had been committed to draw the wrath of the thunderer upon the earth? The truth, like the storm itself, is a mystery. The ancient texts speak of a divine fury unleashed upon the land, but they are vague, their meanings obscured by time and interpretation. Some believe it was a result of the desecration of Teshub's name, his temple abandoned and defiled by those who sought to replace him with Tarhunt. Others whispered that it was the result of the broken union between Teshub and Hittite. The gods attempt to destroy each other in their twisted love and hate. There is another theory, darker and more chilling, that the storm was not a punishment from Teshub at all, but a sign that his power had become too great, too uncontrollable. Some believe that Teshub's anger was not merely the result of mortal transgressions, but a reflection of his fractured self, his shattered connection with Hittite, his fragmented essence now seeking to regain its lost power. If this is true, then the storm was not a punishment, but a desperate cry for redemption, a plea for the return of the balance that had been torn asunder. The storm that tore through the Hittite Empire was not only a physical tempest, but a spiritual one. It was a cataclysm that stripped away the old ways and cast the world into darkness. The lands that once flourished under the divine blessings of Teshub were ravaged by floods, droughts, and fires. Entire cities were swallowed by the earth, their foundations cracked open by the force of the thunder. Those who survived the storm did so in fear, their minds haunted by the roar of the thunderer. The name of Teshub, which had once been a source of strength and hope, now became synonymous with destruction and terror. And yet, despite the devastation, the storm did not last forever. Like all things, it eventually passed. The clouds parted, and the sun once again touched the earth, but the damage was done. The Hittite Empire, already fragile, crumbled under the weight of the storm's fury. The priests and kings who had once worshipped Teshub were gone, their cities abandoned. The empire fell into disarray, and the storm, though it had left its mark, was forgotten by those who rebuilt in its wake. But the storm, as you now know, did not truly vanish. It lingers, waiting. It is a storm of the mind, a storm of the solar tempest that rages within the hearts of those who dare to remember. The thunder of Teshub is not gone, not erased. It has only been silenced for a time. And as you stand here at the edge of this forgotten history, you realize that the storm is still there, buried beneath the surface of the earth, waiting to return. The question now, listener, is simple. Will you listen? Will you dare to hear the thunder once more? To feel the power of Teshub as it crashes through the heavens, tearing apart the world in its wake? The storm has not gone away. It only waits for the right moment to strike. And that moment, you feel, may be closer than you think. The storm subsides, its fury momentarily quieted. But the air still hums with an unsettling energy, as if the tempest has not yet released all of its pent-up force. There is a deeper mystery at play here, something far more dangerous than mere divine rage, something lost, something powerful, the weapon of the storm god. It is said that Teshub wielded a weapon of unimaginable power, one that could split mountains, shatter cities, and call down lightning itself. This weapon, known only as the thunderbolt, was said to be the very essence of Teshub's wrath, a symbol of his might and dominion over the heavens. The thunderbolt, what became of it? It is a question that has lingered for centuries, as elusive as the storm itself. The Hittites, in their reverence for Teshub, spoke of this weapon in hushed tones, fearing its power and the potential for destruction it contained. Some believed that the weapon was a divine gift, created by the gods to channel the raw energy of the storm. Others whispered that it was an artifact older than Teshub himself, a weapon of primordial power that had been entrusted to him to wield in the name of the gods. But as with so many other aspects of Teshub's legacy, the thunderbolt has disappeared from the annals of history. The texts that once described its creation and its power are now lost, and the weapon itself has never been found. Some say it was hidden away, sealed in a secret temple, buried deep beneath the earth where no mortal could ever reach it. Others suggest that it was destroyed in the very storm that broke Teshub's connection with the mortal world, torn asunder in a cataclysmic act that severed the god from his divine weapon. There are whispers, though, that the thunderbolt still exists. Perhaps it was not destroyed, but lost, hidden away in some forgotten corner of the earth, waiting to be rediscovered. Some scholars believe that the weapon lies somewhere beneath the ruins of Hattusa, 8, deep within the heart of the abandoned city, its power dormant, but still alive. Others suggest that the weapon was taken by a secret order, a cult devoted to Teshub, who now guard it from prying eyes, waiting for the day when the Thunderer's return will demand its use once more. In the dead of night, the priests who once served Teshub spoke of the thunderbolt in their most sacred rituals. They believed that by channeling the power of the weapon, they could call forth Teshub's wrath and bend it to their will. But there were always those who feared the weapon, for it was said that no mortal could truly control the fury of the storm. The weapon's power was too great, too dangerous. And so, in the wake of Teshub's fall, it was sealed away, hidden from the world, to prevent its misuse. But you, listener, feel it now? The thunderbolt is not just a weapon, it is a force, a divine power that still lingers, still waits for the moment when it can be unleashed once more. You can almost sense its presence, as if the very air around you crackles with latent energy. It is as if the storm itself is calling to you, urging you to seek out the weapon, to claim its power before it falls into the wrong hands. Yet there is a deeper truth that must be understood. The thunderbolt is not merely a tool of destruction, it is also a key, a means by which Teshub's lost power can be unlocked. The storm that once raged across the earth was not just the wrath of a god, it was the result of a broken connection, a fractured bond between Teshub and his divine essence. The thunderbolt is the missing piece, the link that connects the mortal world to the divine, that can restore the balance that was lost. And yet, there is danger in seeking such power. To wield the thunderbolt is to invite the storm itself into your soul. Those who have tried to uncover its secrets before have been consumed by its fury. Some say they were driven mad by the power. Others claim they were struck down by Teshub's own wrath for daring to disturb his weapon. The question remains, is the thunderbolt truly a gift, or a curse waiting to befall those who seek it? As you stand here in the ruins of a forgotten world, you wonder if you are the one destined to uncover the weapon. The storm, ever present, seems to call you toward it, as if it knows your intentions, as if it wants you to find it. The air is thick with electricity, the wind rustling the remnants of the past. The thunderbolt waits. And if you are brave enough or foolish enough, you may find it. But be warned, listener, to wield the power of the storm is to risk everything. The thunder may crack the sky, but it may also shatter your soul. The winds grow restless again, stirring the dust of forgotten temples and forgotten souls. As the storm of Teshub's memory rises, so too does the whisper of something darker, something hidden beneath the surface, buried beneath the weight of time, and long overshadowed by the official histories of the gods. In the deepest recesses of the empire's collapse, as the thunder of Teshub faded into myth, there arose a secret occult devoted to the forgotten thunderer. These were not the priests who had once served him in the temples of Hattusa, nor the kings who had called upon his power in battle. No, these were the outcasts, the heretics, ones who had seen through the veil of history and sought to revive what had been lost. Whispers of the cult of Teshub begin to surface in the darkest corners of the world. It is said that even as the Hittite Empire crumbled, a small group of devout followers of the storm god continued their secret rites. They gathered in hidden places, far from the eyes of the priests and kings who had turned their backs on Teshub. These worshippers did not seek to return the god to the pantheon of the Hittites. They sought something far darker. They sought to reclaim the power of Teshub, to summon the thunderer back from his exile, to break the silence that had fallen over the storm. In the shadows of the temple ruins, these heretics gathered to perform forbidden rituals that sought not to honor Teshub, but to bind his power once again to the mortal world. These rites, said to be older than any known to the Hittites, were passed down in secret, kept hidden in the most sacred of scrolls. To the uninitiated, these rites appeared to be nothing more than the remnants of lost worship. But to those who knew the truth, these were dark incantations designed to awaken the very storm that had been buried for so long. The most forbidden of these rituals was said to involve a sacrifice, a binding of Teshub's power to a living soul. To call upon the thunderer was not a matter of simple worship, but a matter of life and death. The cult's followers believed that, in order to bring Teshub back, they had to make a pact with the god to offer something of themselves in exchange for his divine wrath. It was not enough to simply offer sacrifices of grain or wine as the priests had done. No, the cultists believed that only a blood sacrifice, a living offering, would be enough to awaken the storm. There were rumors, too, of a hidden location where the final ritual could be performed, the lost temple of Teshub. Some say it lies beneath the ruins of Hattusa, hidden deep in the earth, its entrance concealed by time and decay. Others suggest that the temple was destroyed long ago, buried in the storm that tore through the Hittite Empire. But the most chilling whisper is that the temple still exists, and that those who find it may awaken Teshub himself. You begin to understand the true nature of the cult's work. Their rituals were not simply an act of devotion, but a desperate attempt to control the storm. The storm that had once ravaged the earth now lies dormant, and the cultists believed that by reclaiming Teshub's power, they could harness it for themselves. They were not interested in serving the god, they sought to use him, to become his earthly vessels, to wield the power of the storm and bend it to their own will. But the danger in this, as with all things of the divine, is that such power cannot be controlled. The storm that once tore through the skies was not a force to be toyed with. It was an ancient, chaotic entity, wild and untamed. Those who attempted to bind Teshub's power found themselves consumed by it, their minds shattered, their bodies destroyed by the very force they sought to command. It is said that the last of the cultists, in their final attempt to summon the thunderer, were struck down by lightning, burned alive by the very god they had sought to awaken. And so their secrets were buried once again, their rituals lost to time, their names forgotten. Yet, as you stand here feeling the electric charge in the air, you cannot help but wonder, could the cult have succeeded? Could they have truly awakened Teshub? And if so, what has become of him? The storm god, once a figure of immense power, is now but a shadow, a whisper carried on the wind, waiting for someone to remember him. And then, a thought strikes you. What if the cult is not gone? What if their work continues to this day? The thought sends a chill down your spine. Could there be those hidden in the shadows of the modern world, who still seek to resurrect the thunderer, to to bring forth the storm once more? You sense that the answer lies somewhere deeper, in the forgotten rituals and the lost places. The storm calls to you, urging you to seek out the cult's remnants, to find what remains of the ancient rites. But be warned, for the cult's power is not to be trifled with. To seek them out is to risk becoming a part of the storm, to lose yourself in the very chaos you seek to understand. The heretics have not vanished. They're still there, waiting, watching, ready to call upon Teshub once again. But what they do with his power, and what he will do when he returns, is a mystery that only the storm can answer. As the whispers of the heretic cult fade into the shadows, the storm grows heavier, darker, a constant hum in the back of your mind, a presence that cannot be ignored. The deeper you journey into Teshub's forgotten world, the more you sense that there is something far more ancient, far more profound than just a god's fall from grace. Something not of the mortal world, something cosmic. A rift between the realms of the divine and the mortal that has been torn wide open by the very forces that once governed the universe. And this rift, this tear in the fabric of creation, might just hold the answer to Teshub's disappearance. You can feel the rift as it pulses, a faint tremor beneath your feet, a vibration that travels up your spine. It is the same feeling one might get when standing at the edge of a great chasm, sensing the depth of what lies below but unable to see it. It is said that when Teshub was cast aside, when his name was erased from the pantheon of the Hittite gods, it wasn't just his worship that was lost. No, the divine order itself began to unravel. A subtle yet destructive force that rippled through the cosmos, creating a rift between the gods and the earth. It is a rift that is never fully healed, and it is this fracture that lies at the heart of Teshub's forgotten power. The Hittites, it seems, were not only victims of their own hubris, but of a much larger, more cosmic event. When Teshub's worship was abandoned and his name erased, a cosmic imbalance was created, one that neither the gods nor the mortals could ignore. Teshub, the Thunderer, was not merely a god of the storm, of rain and fury. He was a god of balance, a force that kept the divine and the mortal worlds in harmony. His fall from grace was not just the end of a religious era. It was the beginning of a larger, more dangerous unraveling of the cosmic order. It is said that the Hittites, in their greed for power, sought to control the very fabric of the divine. They worshipped gods of war, gods of conquest, and gods of protection, but in doing so, they inadvertently weakened the connection between the gods and the mortal world. Teshub's fury, his lightning and storms, were a necessary force to maintain the equilibrium. When the god of the storm was cast out, the rift between the heavens and the earth deepened, creating a cosmic void that could not be ignored. But there are those who believe that Teshub's fall was not an accident, nor was it merely the result of human pride. Some whisper that the rift itself was deliberate, a force that was set into motion by those who sought to control the gods, to sever the divine power from the mortal realm. A conspiracy, hidden in plain sight by those who feared the storm. There are even those who claim that the very act of the storm, the destruction wrought by Teshub's fury, was not divine retribution, but the gods' attempt to repair the cosmic rift, to heal the tear in the fabric of reality itself. But was it too late? Was the rift already beyond repair? There are no answers in the ancient texts, no clear resolution to this cosmic mystery. Some say that the rift was a natural consequence of the gods' fading influence over the mortal realm, a gradual collapse of the divine order that has been occurring for millennia. Others suggest that the rift is not only a reflection of the gods' struggle for control, but a sign of something older, something that predates even Teshub's existence. Could it be that the storm god's fall was part of a larger cosmic game of struggle between forces far beyond mortal comprehension? Or could it be that the very act of Teshub's worship, the rituals and sacrifices, were never meant to be controlled at all, but were only meant to maintain the balance between the worlds? You feel the presence of this rift, this unseen tear in the heavens beneath, your feet stretching out into the unknown, pulling at the very fabric of your consciousness. It is a force that cannot be ignored. The rift is not just a tear in the divine order. It is a wound that has been festering for centuries, its edges growing wider, the darkness spreading with every passing moment. The gods who once governed the world, who watched over humanity from their thrones in the heavens, have long since abandoned their posts. And now, the world is left to cope with the aftermath. There is something unsettling about the way the rift feels something alive, something that hums with the energy of the forgotten gods. Waiting to be remembered, waiting for the right moment to break through. But will it be Teshub who returns? Or will another god take his place? And what will happen when the rift finally tears open completely? What dark force will pour through, and who will be left standing when the storm finally breaks free? As you stand here, feeling the pulse of the rift beneath you, the question remains, are you ready for what lies beyond? The storm may have been forgotten, but it is not gone. The cosmic rift, like the storm, is still there, waiting. And when it finally tears open, the heavens themselves will quake. The storm rages within your thoughts, the rift between the divine and the mortal realms widening with each revelation, as the echoes of Teshub's forgotten name reverberate through the past. It becomes clear that his fall did not only signify the end of an era for the Hittites. No, it was a harbinger of something far more catastrophic, the collapse of an entire civilization. The very fabric of the Hittite Empire, once a beacon of power, culture, and divine favor, began to unravel in the wake of Teshub's abandonment. As the gods themselves turned their faces from the earth, the winds of change swept through the land, carrying with them not only the ashes of a fallen empire, but the seeds of something darker, something far more insidious. The Hittite collapse was not just a political failure, it was a spiritual catastrophe. The storms that had once blessed the land, ensuring the fertility of its soil and the prosperity of its people, ceased. The thunder, once a symbol of divine power, now became a symbol of abandonment, the divine silence ringing louder than any crash of lightning. The ancient city of Hattusa, the heart of the Hittite Empire, now lies in ruins, a ghost of its former glory. Once a city filled with vibrant temples, bustling markets, and the divine presence of Teshub's worship, it is now a desolate place, where only the wind whispers through the crumbling stone. The people who once turned to their gods for protection now found themselves exposed to the harsh realities of a world without divine favor. Famine swept through the land, as the rains failed and the crops withered in the heat of a relentless sun. The great armies of the Hittites, who had once marched with the strength of gods behind them, were defeated in battle after battle, their once-proud soldiers falling one by one to the sword and the bow of their enemies. It was not just the physical collapse of the empire that devastated the Hittites, it was the spiritual collapse. It's a slow but inevitable erosion of faith in the gods who had once ruled over them. Without Teshub, the people of Hatti no longer had the thunder of the heavens to guide them. The cosmic balance, which had been maintained for so long, began to tilt, and the world seemed to grow colder, darker, more indifferent to their suffering. The rift, that unseen tear between the realms of the divine and the mortal, had opened wider, and the divine silence became a deafening roar. As the empire crumbled, the last remnants of Teshub's worship were wiped away, erased from the earth as if they had never existed. The priests who had once tended to the god's sacred rites were forgotten, their temples abandoned. The ancient rituals that had once invoked the power of the storm were lost to time, and with them, the hope of a people who had once relied on the gods for their very survival. Yet even as the empire fell, there were those who could not let go of the old ways. The storm god, though forgotten by the masses, was not completely abandoned. In the darkest corners of the empire, in the quietest temples and the most remote villages, whispers of Teshub's power still lingered. There were those who, despite the collapse of their world, continued to hold on to the belief that the Thunderer would return, that the storm was not gone forever, but merely waiting for the right moment to strike once again. In the ruins of Hattusa, there are those who say that the last of the Hittite kings, in his final moments, sought to perform a ritual to call upon Teshub's power, to restore the balance and save his people. But whether that ritual succeeded, or whether it was simply a final, desperate plea to a god long forgotten, no one knows. The records of that time have been lost, and the final days of the Hittite Empire remain shrouded in mystery. But one thing is certain: the collapse of the Hittites was not just a political failure. It was a collapse of the divine order, a sign that the gods had abandoned their people, that the cosmic rift between the realms of the divine and the mortal had grown too wide to be healed. Teshub, the Thunderer, had fallen, and with him fell the world of the Hittites. And as you stand here, in the desolate ruins of an empire that once thrived under the thunderous gaze of Teshub, you can feel the weight of that collapse. The storm that once raged across the heavens now lies silent, waiting. But the echoes of the past remain, reverberating through the air, as if the land itself remembers the God who once ruled it. The Hittites may be gone, their empire reduced to dust, but the storm is not gone, lingers still, buried beneath the rubble, waiting to return. The wind shifts again, carrying with it a whisper that calls you deeper into the forgotten world, towards something buried, something hidden in the deepest shadows of the earth. As you journey further into the realm of Teshub's long-lost legacy, you begin to understand that there are more secrets left to uncover. The Hittite priests, the kings, the heretics all, were bound by their devotion to the storm god. But beneath the surface, beyond the crumbled temples and the hollowed-out altars, there were scriptures hidden away from mortal eyes. These texts were said to contain the most sacred and forbidden knowledge of Teshub, the very key to understanding its power and the mysteries of his divine existence. The hidden scriptures of Teshub are not merely religious texts. They're ancient tomes that delve deep into the nature of the god, into his true form and purpose. These writings, once guarded by the highest-ranking priests of the Hittite Empire, were said to hold the lost rituals that could summon the storm, the rites that could restore balance to the world or tear it apart entirely. But these scriptures were not meant for the unworthy. The knowledge contained within them was dangerous, forbidden a power that could corrupt those who sought it, bending their will to the storm god's fury. There are those who say that the last of these texts was sealed away in a secret chamber, hidden beneath the ruins of Hattusa, a chamber so well guarded that not even the priests could reach it. The writings were said to be composed in a language so ancient, so arcane, that only the most learned scholars could even begin to decipher its meaning. Yet, despite their obscurity, these texts are the key to unlocking the true power of Teshub, perhaps, to understanding the cosmic rift that his fall has caused. The scriptures speak not only of rituals and sacrifices, but of a deeper truth, the nature of the storm itself. They reveal that Teshub was not merely a god of thunder, but a god of change, of transformation. His storms were not just destructive forces, they were agents of renewal, forces that tore down the old to make way for the new. The storms were a way to purify the world, to cleanse it of corruption and decay. But with the loss of Teshub's favor, the storms stopped coming. The cycle was broken, and the land was left barren, its people helpless in the face of a world without divine intervention. The texts also contain references to a long-forgotten prophecy that speaks of Teshub's return. The storm god, it is said, will one day return to the world, but not in the way that the Hittites once expected. The prophecy tells of a time when the rift between the divine and mortal realms will widen so much that the gods will no longer be able to maintain their dominion over the earth. When this happens, the storm will return not as a force of protection, but as a force of destruction. The storm will tear the heavens and the earth asunder, cleansing the world of the corruption that has taken root in the absence of divine power. Some scholars believe that the scriptures hold the key to unlocking the power of the storm and restoring the balance that was lost when Teshub was cast aside. Others, however, fear the knowledge contained within them, believing that to unearth these texts would be to invite the very destruction they prophesize. For if Teshub's power is truly as dangerous as the texts suggest, then there may be no way to control it. The storm, once unleashed, may not stop until it has consumed everything in its path. And so, the scriptures were buried, hidden away in a chamber that no one has been able to find for centuries. The priests who once guarded them are long dead, their names lost to time. The last remnants of the Hittite Empire, its kings and scholars, have all faded into history, leaving behind only fragmented records and shattered ruins. Yet, the texts remain, waiting for the right hands to uncover them. You stand on the edge of this mystery. Feeling the weight of the lost knowledge pressing against your mind, the wind seems to call to you, urging you to find these hidden scriptures, to unlock their secrets and learn the true nature of Teshub's power. But as you feel the storm building once more, you wonder, what would it mean to unlock this power? The texts may hold the key to restoring balance. to calling upon the storm in a way that could save the world or destroy it, but at what cost? For in the storm's fury, there is no distinction between what is sacred and what is profane. The power of the storm does not discriminate. It takes, tears, it reshapes, regardless of the intentions of those who seek it. As you continue your journey, you know that the hidden scriptures of Teshub are out there waiting to be found. But be careful, listener. The storm may answer your call, but the price for awakening the divine will be steep. The knowledge is within your grasp. But are you ready to face the consequences of uncovering it? The winds carry a new, more urgent whisper now, as if the storm itself is beckoning you forward. It is no longer a murmur in the distance, but a force that pulses with an intensity you can almost feel in your very bones. The power of Teshub, long silent and dormant, begins to stir once more. The rift between the divine and the mortal realms has only grown wider, and the time of reckoning seems inevitable. A prophecy, once buried in the forgotten texts, now rises to the surface of your thoughts. The return of Teshub is foretold, but the storm that will come is not one of salvation, it is one of reckoning. The signs are everywhere if you know where to look. The storm clouds gather on the horizon, heavy and ominous, swirling as though they are waiting for something or someone to call them forth. You can feel it in the air, that thick, charged energy that precedes a great change. The storm has not forgotten its true purpose: to cleanse, to renew, to destroy all that stands in the way of its fury. And when Teshub returns, it will not be to restore the world to what it was before. No, the storm will come to remake the world entirely. The ancient texts speak of this return in ominous terms. It is not a return of the god's former glory, nor a time when the world will bask in the protection of his storms. Teshub will return, but his return will bring with it the end of an era. The earth, scarred by his absence, will be torn apart by the force of his power. The prophecy speaks of the rift growing wider still, until the divine and mortal realms are no longer separate at all, till the storm consumes everything in its path. The question now is not whether Teshub will return, but how he will return. Some say he will descend from the heavens in a blaze of thunder and lightning, his form more terrible and magnificent than anything mortal eyes can comprehend. Others suggest that he will come through the very rift that has been growing between the worlds, a being of pure storm energy. Neither flesh nor spirit, but a force of nature itself, unbound by time and space. His return will not be heralded by songs or celebrations, but by the crushing weight of his power, by the roar of the storm that will wash away everything in its path. And yet there are those who believe that Teshub's return may not be the cataclysmic event that the prophecy suggests. Some whisper that his return will be a chance for humanity to be redeemed, to restore balance to a world that has lost its way. They believe that Teshub's storm will not destroy, but will cleanse the earth of the corruption that has taken root in the absence of the divine. But can the storm, once unleashed, be controlled? Can it be guided to purify rather than destroy? As you stand here amidst the ruins of a forgotten world, you feel the storm's presence growing stronger. The air crackles with energy, the winds tugging at your clothes, urging you forward. It is clear now that the time of reckoning is near. Teshub's return is inevitable, and whether it will bring salvation or destruction is a question that remains unanswered. But one thing is certain: the world as you know it will not survive unchanged. The storm calls, and it calls for you. For those who have awakened the knowledge of the forgotten gods cannot remain passive, not when the storm is at the door. The rituals of the heretics, the prophecies of the ancient texts, they all point to a singular moment, a time when the return of the Thunderer will reshape the very world itself. But how can one prepare for a storm that does not just ravage the earth but tears apart reality itself? How can one survive when the divine and the mortal realms collapse into each other and the storm becomes something more than just an external force? You begin to understand that the return of Teshub is not simply the return of a god, is the return of the cosmic chaos that once defined the world. The boundaries between gods and mortals, between life and death, between order and disorder, are about to collapse. And when they do, the storm will take everything. Those who believe they can control it will find themselves consumed by its fury. Those who try to bend it to their will be lost to the wind. their names erased from history as Teshub's thunder shakes the heavens. You have come so far, listener, and the storm is closer than ever. What will you do when the thunderer descends? Will you try to stop him, or will you embrace the storm, knowing that in its fury lies the key to the world's renewal? There is no turning back now. The storm has already begun to gather, and you are caught in its path. In the stillness that follows the prophecy, there is a moment where time seems to stretch out, its threads vibrating with the anticipation of a great upheaval. The storm is not just a physical force, no, it has become something more, a dream, a whispered vision that haunts the minds of those attuned to the divine. And it is in a dream of the high priest of Hattusa, that the final understanding of Teshub's return begins to take shape. The high priest, the last true servant of Teshub, was a man who had once commanded the heavens themselves. His position in the Hittite court was sacred. He was the conduit between the divine and the mortal, the one who communed directly with Teshub. He was revered and feared, for it was said that he could summon the storm at will, that his rituals could bend the will of the gods to the desires of the empire. But even the high priest could not escape the great unraveling that came with the fall of Teshub. As the gods' worship faded and the storms ceased, the high priest's power waned as well, leaving him lost in a world that no longer answered to the thunder. It was in his final days, when his mind was clouded by the uncertainty of the empire's fate, that the high priest had the dream. In the dream, Teshub came to him, not as the mighty god of old, but as a shadow, a mere flicker of what he once was. The storm god stood before the high priest, his form obscured by the very storm that had once heralded his might. The high priest could hear the distant rumble of thunder, feel the static charge in the air, but there was no lightning. No rain, only the promise of the storm. A storm that could not be fully unleashed until the high priest understood the true nature of Teshub's return. Teshub's voice, when it came, was not a roar, but a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. You seek to bring me back, the god said, his voice both ancient and timeless, but you do not understand what you ask. The high priest trembled, for he had long known that Teshub's return would not be the simple restoration of an old god, it would be a rebirth. How he had not anticipated the depth of the transformation that awaited. The dream unfolded further, and Teshub's form began to shift. His once terrifying visage of lightning and thunder blurred into something more primordial, something older than the storm itself. It was as if the storm was but a fragment of something far larger, a force that existed before the gods, before time itself. The high priest began to understand that Teshub's true nature was not just that of a god, but that of a cosmic entity, a force that had once shaped the very fabric of reality. But with this understanding came a terrible realization. Teshub's return would not be the return of a god who could be appeased with sacrifices and prayers. No, the storm that would come was not meant to restore the world, it was meant to remake it. The high priest understood now that the rift between the mortal realm and the divine was not just a gap in power, but a wound that could only be healed by tearing everything apart. The dream showed him a vision of the world being torn asunder, mountains crumbling and cities falling, of the heavens and the earth merging into one violent, chaotic whole. As the storm raged in his mind, the high priest fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the immensity of what he had seen. "I cannot stop it," he whispered in despair. "I cannot control the storm." But Teshub's voice, soft and cold, answered him. "You do not need to control it. The storm cannot be controlled. It will become you, and through you, the world will be reborn." The dream ended then, and the high priest awoke to find the world unchanged. The storm had not yet come, but the knowledge of its arrival lingered like a dark cloud hanging over his soul. He tried in his remaining days to prepare for the storm, gathered what remained of the sacred texts, searched for the forgotten rituals, and sought out the hidden scriptures. But it was too late. The storm was no longer something that could be called by human hands. It was coming whether they were ready or not. And now, as you stand here, listener, feeling the storm begin to stir once more, you realize that the high priest's dream was not just a vision, it was a warning. The warning that the return of Teshub is not something to be controlled or understood. It is a return that will tear apart the boundaries of the known world, unraveling everything that once stood firm. The storm is not merely a force of nature, it is a force of creation and destruction. A cosmic power that will reshape reality itself. The dream of the high priest reveals a terrible truth. Teshub's return is not salvation. It is not redemption. It is the end. The end of what was and the beginning of something else. Something unknown. Something beyond comprehension. And yet, despite the horror of this vision, there is a part of you that feels drawn to it. For in the storm's fury, there is a strange allure. A call to something greater than yourself. Something that transcends the mortal realm. The high priest understood that the storm could not be controlled, but you, listener, may find that you have no choice but to face it. The storm is already coming. The only question is whether you will be swept away by it, or if you will stand in its path and witness the rebirth of the world. The winds grow colder now, as if they carry with them the chill of a forgotten world, a world on the brink of its final transformation. The storm clouds that once marked Teshub's presence are growing closer, more oppressive, as if the very heavens are tightening, preparing to unleash a fury that has been held back for far too long. And as the storm draws near, you are drawn into the final chapter of this ancient tale, the burning of Hattusa. Once Hattusa was the beating heart of the Hittite Empire, a city of power, wisdom, and divine favor. Its temples were filled with the prayers of the people, its markets with the goods of a civilization that had flourished under the protection of the gods. Hattusa was the epicenter of Teshub's worship, a place where his thunder was invoked and where the storms themselves were believed to be born. It was a city whose very existence was bound to the will of the storm god, whose rulers saw themselves as his chosen. But as Teshub's power waned, so too did the power of Hattusa. The city, once proud and mighty, became a shadow of its former self. The temples, once filled with the offerings of the faithful, stood empty, their altars cold. The markets, once bustling with the exchange of goods, grew quiet as the divine favor that had once blessed the city faded. Hattusa, it seemed, was being slowly forgotten, its divine connection severed, its spiritual heart ripped out, and then came the fire. It is said that on that fateful day, the sky itself seemed to break open. The storm that had long been dormant began to stir, its presence felt in every crack of thunder that echoed across the land. The earth trembled as if it too could feel the fury of Teshub stirring deep within it. And in the city of Hattusa, where the flames of the past still smoldered, the final spark was struck. It was not a natural fire, nor was it one that could be easily explained. Some say that it was the last of the Hittite kings, in his desperation to restore Teshub's power, who invoked the storm god in one final futile ritual. Others suggest that the fire was the result of the rift between the gods and the mortals, the cosmic tear that had been growing for centuries, finally bursting open in a violent release of energy. But whatever the cause, the result was the same. The city of Hattusa was consumed by flame. The fire that engulfed the city was unlike anything the Hittites had ever seen. It did not burn like a normal fire. It was a fire that seemed to feed on the very soul of the city. A fire that burned with the intensity of a god's wrath. The storm clouds above grew darker, swirling in a frenzy as if to feed the flames. The sky rumbled with thunder and lightning arced across the heavens, striking the earth with a ferocity that seemed to match the fire's intensity. The city burned for days, its walls crumbling to ash, its temples reduced to nothing but charred remains. As the flames consumed the city, the people of Hattusa were forced to flee, but many could not escape the storm's fury. The fire spread rapidly, fed by the winds of the storm, and soon the entire city was lost to the flames. It is said that those who remained priests, scholars, and soldiers sought refuge in the temples, but even the gods could not save them. The storm had come to claim its due, and the city, once blessed by Teshub's presence, was now consumed by the very storm that had been forgotten. The burning of Hattusa was not just the end of a city, it was the end of an era. The gods had abandoned their people, and the storm that had once protected them had now become their undoing. Teshub's return, it seemed, was not one of grace and protection, but one of fury and destruction. The fire that destroyed Hattusa was a symbol of the gods' power, but it was also a symbol of the cost of turning away from the divine. Teshub's thunder had been silenced, but in the end, it was the storm's wrath that had come to claim what was rightfully his. As the ruins of Hattusa smoldered in the aftermath of the fire, The world seemed to hold its breath. The storm had passed, but the damage was done. The rift between the mortal and divine realms had grown so wide that it could never be fully healed. The once great city was now a ghost, its memory fading with the smoke that rose into the sky. And yet in the silence that followed the storm, there was something else, something that could not be ignored. The fire had consumed the city, but it had also purified it. It had torn down the old to make way for something new. The storm, it seemed, was not just an agent of destruction, it was an agent of rebirth, a force that could tear apart the world only to reshape it into something else entirely. As the last embers of Hattusa's destruction fade into the past, you realize that the storm, like the fire, is not just a force of chaos, it is a force of renewal. Teshub's return will not simply remake the world, it will reshape it, tearing down the old to make way for the new. The world of the Hittites is gone, but the storm is far from finished. And as you stand here listening to the winds, you can feel the pull of that storm. The call to witness the rebirth of a world that has been waiting for the return of Teshub. The storm is coming. The world is changing, and the only question left is whether you will stand with it or be consumed by it. The storm, now an almost palpable presence in the air, intensifies as you stand on the precipice of the old world, gazing into the vast, silent ruins of Hattusa. The city, once a cradle of divine favor, now lies in ruin, its memory fading. But the storm still churns in the air, alive with the promise of a return long foreseen. The last echoes of Teshub's power, quieted by centuries of abandonment, are finally rising again, growing louder with each passing moment. The Thunderer is not gone. No, he is waiting. The skies darken above, but not with the stillness of an approaching storm. This thunder is not the soft rumbles of distant clouds gathering, it is something far more ancient, far more terrifying. Teshub's fury is not a gentle roll of thunder, it is the roar of a god whose power has been smothered by the passage of time, whose fury has built for centuries, waiting for the moment when it could burst free once more. The world you know, this fragile world, will never be the same. And yet, as you stand there, amidst the remains of the Hittite Empire, you begin to feel the weight of something more. Something older. Teshub's return is not the mere awakening of an ancient god, but the culmination of something far more cosmic. His thunder is not just the roar of a god reclaiming his power. It is the cracking of the heavens, the breaking of the boundaries between the divine and the mortal, between the known and the unknown. In the final moments of Hattusa's fall, before the city was swallowed by the flames of Teshub's wrath, there were whispers of the last thunder, thunder that would shake the very foundations of existence. The final thunder would not simply mark the god's return. It would be the moment of revelation, the moment when the rift between the gods and the mortals would be closed, but not in the way anyone had imagined. It was said that the last thunder would leave nothing standing, that it would cleanse the earth of the corruption that had taken root. It would tear apart the world as it had been to make way for something new, something that no mortal could comprehend. The last thunder is coming, and you, listener, find yourself caught in its path. As the winds swirl, becoming ever more violent, the earth beneath your feet begins to tremble. The rift, the great cosmic tear, has widened, and the forces at play are no longer just gods and mortals. There are darker, older forces stirring, forces that even Teshub, in his divine wrath, may not fully understand. The storm, the final storm, is not just a tempest, it is a reckoning that will force the world to reckon with its forgotten past, its neglected gods, and the consequences of ignoring what has been cast aside. In the heart of the storm, you can hear it the faintest rumble of thunder, deep and resonant, vibrating through the very bones of the earth. It is not the distant echo of a storm, it is the thunder of a god who has been locked away in the deepest recesses of the universe, waiting for this moment. A moment when all things will be cast into the flames of divine retribution, and only those who have the strength to endure the storm will remain. And now, you realize the storm has already begun. You feel it deep within your core. The storm is not something that will come from above. No, the storm is already inside you, inside the very world you inhabit. It is not merely the return of Teshub, it is the return of all things forgotten, of all things cast aside. The storm is a force of renewal, yes, but it is also a force of annihilation. The God who once ruled the heavens will not simply return to restore what was lost. He will return to reshape the world entirely. As the rumblings of thunder grow louder, the sky above you darkens, swirling with violent clouds. The air is thick with electricity, and the ground beneath your feet shakes with the sheer force of the power building. You can feel it now. The storm is close, closer than you've ever known. The last thunder is not a promise of salvation. It is a test of strength, of endurance, and of transformation. The storm will tear the world apart, but in its wake, something new will emerge. Whether you will be part of that rebirth or lost in the chaos is uncertain. The gods, once thought dead, are stirring again. Their power is returning, and with it, a new order. But this order will not be the one you know. The storm that comes will leave no room for old ways. The gods are not here to restore, they are here to reclaim. The old world is gone, its foundations shattered. The new world, the world after the storm, will be one forged in the fires of divine wrath and cosmic rebirth. As the thunder crashes and the winds howl, you stand at the edge of everything that has come before. The storm is here, the gods are returning, and the world as you know it is about to end. What will you do, listener? Will you stand in the path of the storm, or will you seek shelter, hoping that the thunder will pass you by? Either way, the world will never be the same. The last thunder has arrived. The storm has come, and it is not a storm of rain or wind. No, this storm is the roaring climax of a world's end and rebirth. The last thunder crashes through the heavens, shaking the very ground beneath your feet, and you feel the weight of it in your chest, violent. It's a relentless force that seems to tear the world apart with every rumble. The air, thick with static, crackles as the storm breaks through the heavens like a tear in the fabric of time itself. The divine, long forgotten, has returned, and with it comes a terrible curse, the curse of the forgotten gods. You stand in the eye of the storm, where time itself seems to slow and stretch, as if the world is holding its breath. The winds scream, howling with the fury of gods forgotten, their names lost in the churning chaos. It is as if all the gods of the past, those who were once powerful and revered, have awakened in this final moment. Teshub, the Thunderer, is not alone. His return has summoned all that was once erased forgotten gods, forsaken deities, those whose names were struck from the annals of history, whose very existence was wiped from the memories of mortals. The curse that follows the storm is not one of fire or lightning. It is far deeper. It is the curse of remembrance. The gods have returned to claim what was once theirs, but their return is not gentle. No, it is violent, for they are not simply coming to restore their lost dominion, they are coming to reclaim it. And in doing so, they will awaken the truth buried deep within the earth, a truth that mortals were never meant to remember. As you stand amidst the chaos, the storm around you seems to pulse with an almost sentient fury. Teshub's thunder is not merely a physical force, it is a divine reclamation. The storm shakes the very fabric of reality, and you realize in a moment of horrifying clarity that the curse of the forgotten gods is not just a curse upon the world. It is a curse upon you. The gods are not merely returning, they are reclaiming their lost power. Forgotten gods, the ones whose names were erased, whose worship was abandoned, are rising from their graves. And they will not forget those who cast them aside. The curse is not one of destruction alone. It is one of eternal remembrance, an unrelenting force that will remind the world of what it has lost, of what it has forgotten. You can feel it like an ice-cold grip tightening around your heart, a pressure building inside you as the storm rages above. The gods demand to be remembered. What were once the whispers of the past, the names, the rituals, the forgotten stories, are now pressing in on you. The storm is their voice, their call to be acknowledged once more. It is as if the veil between the mortal realm and the divine has thinned, and all the gods you thought were gone are now here, watching, waiting, and they remember. They remember the mortals who betrayed them, who abandoned their names and cast them into the shadows. The curse is not one of revenge, but of remembrance. The gods who have been forgotten by time will never allow themselves to be erased again. The storm, the last thunder, is the reckoning for those who turned their backs on the divine. It is not just Teshub's return, it is the return of all that was lost. And in the silence that follows the storm, in the aftermath of the destruction, you understand? The world is now bound to the gods once more, but at what cost? The curse is deeper than mere punishment. It is an eternal reminder that the gods cannot be silenced, cannot be erased. They are bound to the very fabric of existence, and their power, once forgotten, has been reawakened. You are not just a witness to the storm, you are now part of it. You have heard the thunder, felt the winds, and now you must live with the consequences. The forgotten gods have returned, and there is no escaping their memory. You are bound to them as surely as the storm is bound to the sky. As the winds begin to die down, and the last rumble of thunder fades into the distance, you realize that the world will never be the same. The storm, in its wake, has left not just destruction, but a curse. A curse of remembrance. A reminder that the gods never truly leave. They wait always to be recalled. And now, the storm has done more than return Teshub. It has brought forth a new era, where the gods, in their fury and power, will never be forgotten again. The storm is over, but the curse has just begun. And as you listen in the deepening silence, you hear it, the faintest whisper of another god, another storm, waiting to rise again. If your candle hasn't gone out, then you're probably ready for the next god. The storm has passed, but its echoes linger. The world is different now, reshaped, reborn, and yet beneath the surface, something stirs, something older than time, something bound to the very essence of creation itself. You listener, stand at the edge of this new world, a world that has been forged by the fury of forgotten gods. The sky above is no longer what it once was. It is heavy, charged with the power of those who have returned, those who have broken the veil between the divine and the mortal. The storm, the thunder, the fury of Teshub was not just an end, but a beginning. Duet is the beginning. A world where the gods are never truly gone, where their power lingers, waiting to be remembered. In the wake of the storm, there is a strange silence, but it is not an empty one. It is the silence of things waiting to awaken, of things that have always been there, but have now been recalled to existence. The storm has brought more than just destruction. It has brought rebirth. A new cycle in which the gods will rise again, just as they have done for eons. You are no longer the same as you were before the storm. The curse of the forgotten gods has touched you, has changed you, and in your soul. You feel the stirrings of those ancient forces that have shaped history, guided empires, and torn apart worlds. And now, as the last rumblings of Teshub's thunder fade into memory, you know that you are standing at the crossroads of a new age. The gods are back. They will never again be forgotten. But they are not the only ones who are waiting. The storm has not silenced all the voices. There are more gods, lost in the folds of time, whose names have not been whispered in millennia. There are gods of shadows, gods of fire, gods of the forgotten realms, waiting, watching, preparing to rise again. You feel their presence in the air, in the very fabric of the world. The next god is always out there, waiting for those who are ready to listen, to remember. The curse of the forgotten gods is not just one of memory, it is a call. A call to those who hear it, who seek the truths buried beneath the surface, who are willing to listen to the winds that carry the names of those lost. The storm has passed, yes, but it was only the beginning. There are more gods. There are always more gods. And you, listener, have only begun to understand the vast, eternal nature of what lies beyond the veil. If your candle hasn't gone out, then you're probably ready for the next god.